My name is Sarah, 27 years old, living the marketing executive dream in Chicago. 2 years had passed since I'd gone home. Always too busy with deadlines, always promising to visit next time. This Christmas, I finally booked that flight, imagining warm hugs and twinkling lights welcoming me. Instead, I found our family home dark and silent. In the kitchen sat Grandpa Harold, alone with just a simple sandwich, looking smaller than I remembered. On the table lay a note in my mother's handwriting. Before I tell you what that note said, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if family secrets intrigue you, because what I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The Chicago skyline glittered outside my office window as I worked another late night. Spreadsheets and campaign plans filled my computer screen while most of my colleagues had already left to start their holiday celebrations. That was my life for the past 3 years since landing the junior executive position at Palmer Marketing Group, always the last to leave, first to arrive. My boss, Diana, rewarded dedication with opportunities, and I'd seized every one, climbing faster than anyone expected. Still here, Matthews? Diana poked her head into my office around 9 p.m., eyebrows raised. The Jefferson proposal isn't due until after New Year's. Just finishing some tweaks, I replied, barely looking up. Want to get ahead before the break. She lingered in the doorway. Any plans for Christmas? Heading home. The question made me pause. Home. The word felt increasingly abstract. Probably just catching up on sleep. Maybe meeting friends for dinner. The same answer I'd given last year and the year before that. After she left, I found myself staring at my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom from last week I hadn't returned yet. A text from Dad asking if I'd received the Christmas card they sent. I'd seen it in my stack of mail, but hadn't opened it. When had I last been home? My brother Tyler's graduation almost 2 years ago. I'd flown in the morning of and left that night, claiming an important meeting the next day. Mom's disappointed face flashed in my memory. Something shifted inside me as I looked around my sleek, impersonal office. Awards and accomplishments lined the walls, but no photos. Nothing personal. I picked up my phone and booked a flight home for the next morning. No warning, no announcement. I'd surprise them and finally be part of a proper family Christmas. The flight to Pennsylvania was bumpy with winter weather. I tried calling several times, but no one answered. Not unusual during the busy holiday season, I reasoned. They were probably shopping or visiting relatives. The anticipation built as the taxi turned onto Maple Street. I imagined the scene awaiting me, Mom's famous gingerbread cookies, Dad's excessive decorations, Grandpa Harold's terrible Christmas jokes, and Tyler's latest college stories. But as we approached the house, something felt wrong. Our home had always been the brightest on the block during Christmas, Dad's competitive streak ensuring we had more lights than anyone else. Tonight, the house stood dark among the cheerfully decorated neighbors. No lights, no inflatable Santa, no wreaths. Just darkness. You sure this is the right address, miss? The taxi driver asked. Yes, I said, my stomach tightening. This is it. I paid him and stood in the driveway, overnight bag in hand. The lawn needed mowing, mail overflowed from the box, and the garden beds Mom had always kept immaculate were overgrown. I checked my phone, still no responses to my messages asking if everyone was okay. Using my old key, I opened the front door. The house was silent except for a faint light coming from the kitchen. The living room, usually transformed into a winter wonderland by now, sat bare and half empty. Some furniture was missing, and boxes were stacked in corners. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing. Mom? Dad? Anyone home? I followed the light to the kitchen and stopped in the doorway. Grandpa Harold sat alone at our family table, eating a simple sandwich. No holiday feast, no decorations. Just my 80-year-old grandfather in the dim light of a single bulb, looking up at me with surprise that quickly turned to something like guilt. Sarah, he said, his voice cracking. What are you doing here, sweetheart? I rushed to hug him, noticing how thin he felt through his cardigan. His usual robust frame had diminished, and his hands trembled slightly as they patted my back. surprising everyone for Christmas. Where is everyone? Why is the house so dark? The questions tumbled out as I pulled back to look at him. His eyes, blue and faded behind his glasses, darted away from mine. Your parents aren't here, honey. Shopping? Church event? I asked, still clinging to my expectations. He shook his head slowly, then gestured to a folded piece of paper on the table. They left this for me. I think you should read it. The note sat ominously on the scratched wooden surface of our family table, the one where we'd shared thousands of meals, holiday celebrations, homework sessions, and heart-to-hearts. Now it held just a half-eaten sandwich and a secret I was about to discover. Grandpa, what's going on? Where's Mom and Dad? Where's Tyler? Why does the house look like this? Panic edged into my voice as I reached for the note. Sit down first, Sarah, he said gently. It's been a while since we've seen you. Maybe we should talk before you read that. But I was already unfolding the paper, my heart pounding as I recognized my mother's neat handwriting. Whatever was written there, I knew instinctively it would change everything. My hands trembled as I unfolded my mother's note. Her familiar handwriting jumped out at me, but the words felt like they were written by a stranger. Harold, we made it to Florida. The drive was long, but the rental truck held up fine. The apartment is small but clean, and the complex has a nice community area. Jennifer next door already brought us a welcome basket. We've unpacked the essentials, but it will take time to feel like home. I've left casseroles labeled in the freezer. Please remember your medication at breakfast and dinner. The pharmacy can deliver refills if you call the number on the fridge. We all think you're being stubborn by not coming with us, but we respect your decision. Tyler started his new job yesterday. The pay isn't great, but it's something until a better opportunity comes along. Richard has an interview next week with a construction company. Will call on Christmas. Tell Sarah if she actually calls or visits, though I doubt she will. She's too busy for family these days. Maybe it's better she doesn't know how bad things got anyway. Love. Margaret. I looked up from the note. Confusion and hurt washing over me. Florida? They moved to Florida? When? Why didn't anyone tell me? Grandpa Harold sighed, pushing his sandwich plate away. About 2 months ago now. Your father lost the hardware store back in March. Lost it? What do you mean, lost it? The family business had been part of our town for 3 generations. Economy hit hard. Big box store opened on the highway. Bills piled up. He spoke in clipped sentences, as if each word cost him something. They tried everything to save it. Took out loans. Your dad even cashed in his retirement account. I sank into a chair, trying to process this information. But they never said anything to me about money problems. Would you have listened? The question wasn't accusatory, just sad. When was the last time you had a real conversation with your parents, Sarah? Not just a quick call between meetings? The truth stung. Our communications had become increasingly superficial, brief updates, holiday wishes, occasional photos exchanged. I'd been so absorbed in my career that I'd reduced my family to occasional check-ins. They didn't want to burden you, Grandpa continued. You were building your life in Chicago, making something of yourself. Your mother was so proud, telling everyone about her daughter, the executive. But they moved states without telling me. My voice cracked. They just left. Your Uncle Thomas offered your dad work at his construction company in Tampa. They couldn't afford to keep the house after the foreclosure notice came. He gestured around the kitchen. Most of this will be gone after the bank auction next month. They only took what would fit in a rental truck. Foreclosure. The word felt alien associated with my childhood home. And you? Why didn't you go with them? A stubborn look crossed his weathered face. This is my home. Lived in this town 60 years. Not about to start over in some Florida retirement community just because things got tough. I noticed then how the kitchen had changed. The china cabinet that held Mom's treasured collection was empty, the walls bare of family photos. The house was being dismantled piece by piece. And your health? Mom mentioned medication in the note. He waved dismissively. Just old age catching up. Nothing to fuss over. But his evasiveness, the The slight wheeze in his breathing and the array of pill bottles by the sink told a different story. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling them right now. The call connected after several rings. Hello. My mother's voice sounded different, tired. Mom, it's me. I'm at the house with Grandpa. A long pause followed. Sarah? You're home? For Christmas? Yes, and I just found out you moved to Florida 2 months ago. How could you not tell me? Another pause. We left messages, Sarah. Called several times. You never picked up or called back. Had they? I scrolled through my call history. There were indeed several missed calls from my parents around October that I'd meant to return but never did. I've been busy, but that's no excuse for not telling me something this important. Busy. The word hung between us. You've been busy for years, Sarah. We stopped expecting you to have time for family problems. Dad's voice came on the line. Sarah? Is that really you at the house? Yes, Dad. I came to surprise everyone for Christmas and instead found out our family has completely fallen apart while I wasn't paying attention. It's not fallen apart, he said defensively. We're adapting. The store closing was hard. 40 years of family history gone. But we're making a fresh start. And Tyler? Community college didn't work out. He's bartending now, saving up to try again. Another shock. My brother had been studying computer science, last I'd heard. Why didn't anyone tell me things were so bad? I demanded. Honey, Mom's voice returned, gentler now. You made it clear your career came first. Every time we tried to talk about anything serious, you'd cut the conversation short. Always rushing to meetings or deadlines. Had I done that? Memories flashed of ending calls with sorry, gotta run, or texting can't talk now, swamped at work. I would have helped if I'd known, I said, though even to my ears it sounded hollow. Would I have really taken time away from my carefully constructed career to help my struggling family? We didn't want charity, Sarah. We wanted our daughter. The hurt in Mom's voice was unmistakable. Anyway, we should let you go. I'm sure you're busy, even on Christmas Eve. After disconnecting, I sat in stunned silence. Grandpa watched me, his eyes kind but knowing. That night, I wandered through the half-empty house like a ghost. My childhood bedroom remained mostly intact but felt foreign. Trophies and achievements lined the shelves, physical evidence of the drive that had taken me away from here and kept me away too long. I lay awake in my old bed, surrounded by the remnants of my family's life, feeling like a stranger. How had I missed the signs? How had I let myself become so disconnected that my entire family could relocate without my knowledge? The ceiling still had the glow-in-the-dark stars Dad had put up when I was 8. They dimmed with age, just like my connection to this place and these people. But they were still there, faintly glowing, like the family bonds I'd neglected but not completely lost. Morning arrived with pale winter sunlight filtering through my childhood bedroom curtains. For a moment, disoriented from sleep, I expected to hear Mom cooking breakfast, Dad's morning news program, and Tyler's music. Instead, silence hung throughout the house, broken only by Grandpa Harold's slow movements downstairs. I found him at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, staring out the window at the frost-covered backyard. The swing set where Tyler and I had spent countless summer days stood rusted and forgotten. Morning, I said, pouring myself coffee from the old percolator. Some things hadn't changed. Sleep okay? He asked, his voice morning rough. I nodded, sitting across from him. Grandpa, I need to understand everything. No more protecting me or sugarcoating. What really happened? He studied me for a long moment, perhaps assessing if I truly wanted the unvarnished truth. It started about 3 years ago, he began. Your dad got approached by an investor wanting to franchise the hardware store. Promised expansion, bigger profits, secure future. Sounds promising, I said. What went wrong? Everything. His weathered hands tightened around the mug. The investor took your dad's money, then disappeared. Police said it was a sophisticated scam targeting small business owners across 3 states. Your father lost nearly $200,000. I gasped. That's everything they had. And then some. They remortgaged the house to invest in this opportunity. When the money vanished, the new mortgage payments became impossible. Why didn't Dad just declare bankruptcy? Grandpa's expression hardened.
Pride.
Your father's a Matthews. Matthews men pay their debts. Besides, bankruptcy wouldn't have saved the store once the big chain moved in. They were undercutting every price, offering services your dad couldn't match. A knot formed in my stomach. And Mom? Her health issues mentioned in the note. Grandpa hesitated. Your mother had a minor heart attack last year. Stress, doctors said. Insurance covered some, but the co-pays, medications, it all adds up. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. A heart attack? And no one told me. She made us promise not to. Said you were finalizing some big account. Seattle company, I think. She didn't want to distract you. I remember that period, securing the Westfield account, my first major client, as team lead. I'd worked 18-hour days for weeks, barely sleeping. Mom had called several times, but I'd sent quick texts saying I'd call when things calmed down. I never did. What else don't I know, Grandpa? He sighed heavily. Maybe we should look through some things. Your parents left documents in the office. Dad's home office, once meticulously organized, was now a cluttered collection of boxes and papers. Grandpa and I spent the morning sifting through financial documents that told the story of my family's downfall. Past due notices, medical bills with alarming balances, letters from the bank about foreclosure proceedings, a rejection letter for a loan modification. Each piece of paper revealed another chapter in a story I should have known. Most heartbreaking was a folder labeled Sarah. Inside were printouts of emails I'd sent, photographs from my infrequent visits, newspaper clippings about my company's successes. Also inside, a half-completed letter from Mom, dated nearly a year ago. My dearest Sarah, I'm writing to ask for your help, though I don't know if I'll ever send this. Your father wouldn't want me to. Things have gotten difficult here. The store is failing, and we're struggling to keep up with bills. Your father is working himself to exhaustion trying to save everything. I had some health troubles recently that scared us all. Nothing for you to worry about, but it's made me realize how precious family is and how I miss you. I know your career is important, and we're so proud of what you've accomplished. I wonder sometimes if we pushed you too hard to succeed, taught you to value achievement over connection. That was never our intention. If you could come home, even for a weekend, it would mean the world. We need our daughter, not her money or her business expertise, just her presence. The letter ended there, never completed, never sent. She couldn't bring herself to ask for help, Grandpa said softly from behind me. Neither could your father. But I would have helped. I protested, tears streaming down my face. Would you? Or would you have sent money to solve the problem and gone back to your life? His question wasn't cruel, just honest. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Mrs. Baker from next door stood on the porch with a small Christmas cake. Her eyes widened seeing me. Sarah Matthews. I didn't know you were visiting. She embraced me warmly. Your grandfather didn't mention you were coming. He didn't know, I admitted, inviting her in. Over tea, Mrs. Baker filled in more gaps. How neighbors had organized meal trains when Mom was recovering. How Dad had aged years and months as the business failed. How the community had helped pack the moving truck for Florida. We all offered to help more, she said, stirring her tea. But your father, well, Matthew's pride runs deep. They never said anything to me, I repeated, still struggling to accept my ignorance. Mrs. Baker's kind eyes held something like pity.
Honey, they tried. We all saw it.
But you became the one who escaped, who was too important for small-town problems. That's how your mother put it once, not unkindly, mind you. She was proud, but there was sadness there too. After she left, I found myself in front of the living room wall where family photos had once hung. Light rectangles on the faded wallpaper marked their absence. I could picture each missing frame: family vacations, graduations, holidays. Moments I'd increasingly excused myself from. They took most photos with them, Grandpa said, watching me from the doorway. Left the ones of the house and store behind. Too painful, I guess. Guilt crushed down on me as I recalled ignored calls, rushed visits, distracted conversations. Signs had been there, Dad mentioning tough times at the store, Mom saying they were making adjustments, Tyler being uncharacteristically vague about college. I'd been too absorbed in my own world to notice their world collapsing. I've been selfish, I whispered. Grandpa's hand rested on my shoulder. Not selfish. Just focused elsewhere. The question is, now that you know, what will you do? I turned to him, resolve forming through my tears. First, I'm calling Mom and Dad again.
A real conversation this time.
Then I'm booking a ticket to Florida. Good girl, he nodded. They'll be glad to see you. And what about you? I asked, noticing the slight tremor in his hand, the wheeze in his breathing. Will you be okay here alone? Maybe you should come with me. This is where I belong, he said firmly. Besides, someone needs to sort through what's left before the bank takes over. His stubbornness worried me, but I understood it. The same determination ran through my veins, channeled differently, but just as strong. That evening, I sat on the porch steps, phone in hand, ready to call my parents. Before I could dial, I scrolled through recent texts and emails with new eyes. So many brief exchanges, quick updates without substance. So many missed opportunities to really connect. A notification appeared, a work email marked urgent. My thumb hovered over it momentarily before I swiped it away. For once, work could wait. My family had already waited too long. The following morning, I woke to a thud and a muffled cry from downstairs. Sleep disoriented, I stumbled out of bed, calling out, "Grandpa? Everything okay?" No answer. Heart racing, I rushed down the stairs. Grandpa Harold lay crumpled on the kitchen floor, one hand clutching his chest, the other reaching toward the counter where his medication sat. "Grandpa." I dropped to my knees beside him. His face was ashen, lips tinged blue, breathing labored and shallow. "I'm calling an ambulance. Hold on." My hands shook as I dialed 911, giving them our address and describing his symptoms. The dispatcher instructed me to place him flat on his back, loosen any tight clothing, and check if he'd taken his heart medication. "Pills," he gasped, pointing weakly toward the counter. "Forgot morning dose." While waiting for the ambulance, I held his hand, terrified by how cold and clammy it felt. His eyes, usually bright and alert despite his age, seemed unfocused and distant. "Stay with me, Grandpa," I pleaded, fighting tears. "Help is coming." "Sarah," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Call your parents." The ambulance arrived within minutes, though it felt like hours. Paramedics worked efficiently, attaching monitors, administering oxygen, and transferring him to a stretcher. Their expressions remained professionally neutral, but the urgency in their movements told me everything I needed to know. "I'm his granddaughter," I explained, following them outside. "Can I ride with him?" "Yes, ma'am," one nodded. "But we're moving fast." The ambulance interior was cramped and clinical, a stark contrast to the warm kitchen we'd just left. Grandpa's eyes fluttered open and closed as the paramedic inserted in 4 and checked vital signs. I clutched my phone, debating whether to call my parents now or wait until I had more information. The last thing I wanted was to panic them when they were states away, unable to help. At County General Hospital, Grandpa was whisked away for immediate assessment, leaving me alone in a sterile waiting room with outdated magazines and a muted television playing holiday specials. The irony wasn't lost on me. Christmas Eve, and I was in a hospital worrying about the only family member who hadn't abandoned me. Or was it the other way around? After an hour of anxious waiting, Dr. Reynolds, a cardiologist with kind eyes and a direct manner, approached me. "Ms. Matthews? Your grandfather has suffered a moderate heart attack. His condition is serious, but stable for now. We've moved him to the cardiac care unit for monitoring and treatment. Will he?" I couldn't finish the question. It's too early for definitive prognosis, but I should be upfront. Your grandfather's heart shows significant damage from previous cardiac events. Has he been following up with a cardiologist regularly? I shook my head, embarrassed by my ignorance. I don't know. I haven't been. I don't live here anymore. I see. His tone remained professional, but I detected slight judgment. Well, our records show he was advised to undergo bypass surgery 6 months ago, but declined treatment. He's been managing with medication alone, which is not the recommended approach for his condition. The revelation stunned me. Surgery? He never mentioned that. Patients his age sometimes make these decisions. Cost concerns, fear of procedures, not wanting to burden family. He trailed off, letting me fill in the blanks. Cost concerns. Of course. With my parents' financial collapse, even with Medicare, the out-of-pocket expenses for major surgery would have been substantial. Can I see him? I asked. Briefly. He needs rest, but family presence can be beneficial. Grandpa looked small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping monitors and tubes. His eyes opened when I approached, a weak smile forming. Quite a drama I've caused, he whispered. I took his hand, careful not to disturb the four. Why didn't you tell me about the bypass surgery recommendation?
He sighed.
What good would it have done? Your parents lost everything. I'm 80 years old. Seemed selfish to spend thousands extending my life a few years when that money could help them start over. That should have been your decision to make, not theirs. And I could have helped. You have your own life, Sarah. Your own bills, your own future to secure. You're my future too, I insisted, tears welling. All of you are. I've just been too blind to see it. A nurse entered to check his vitals, giving me a sympathetic smile. 5 more minutes, then he needs to rest. When she left, I squeezed his hand. I'm calling Mom and Dad now. They need to know. Fear flashed across his face. Don't worry them. They can't afford to come back. They're coming back, I said firmly. We're facing this as a family. In the hospital corridor, I finally made the call I'd been dreading. Mom answered on the second ring. Sarah? How's everything with Dad? Is he eating properly? Taking a deep breath, I forced the words out. Mom, Grandpa's in the hospital. He had a heart attack this morning. Her sharp intake of breath cut through the line. How bad? Serious, but stable. But Mom, there's more. He was supposed to have bypass surgery months ago and refused because of money. Did you know? Silence, then a muffled sob. We knew he needed some procedure. He downplayed it, said it was optional, not urgent. It was urgent, Mom. And now. I couldn't continue, overwhelmed by the magnitude of familial communication failures. We're coming, she said immediately. Your father and I will leave within the hour. It's a 14-hour drive, but we'll do it straight through. I can help with flights, I offered. We can't afford. I interrupted. Please, Mom. Let me do this. After a pause, she agreed, and I quickly arranged tickets for them on the next available flight. Tyler couldn't leave his new job without risking it, but would try to join us after Christmas. While waiting for my parents' arrival, I maintained a vigil at Grandpa's bedside. Between his periods of sleep, he shared stories I'd never heard about my grandmother's battle with cancer decades ago, about the early days of the hardware store when my father was just a boy, about family heritage and values I'd taken for granted. Your grandmother was the strong one, he said, his voice growing stronger as he reminisced. When we lost the first store to fire in '78, she's the one who gathered the insurance money and found the new location. Never saw her cry until it was all settled. Then she broke down in private, just once. That sounds like Mom, I observed. Apple doesn't fall far. Your mother has that same steel. Your father's the dreamer, the optimist. Needed both to survive in small business. He paused, studying me. You got both too. The drive and the vision. Just been aiming it away from family. His words stung with truth. I had inherited my family's best qualities, but channeled them exclusively into career advancement, measuring success in promotions and salary increases rather than relationships maintained. Late that night, alone in the CCU waiting room, the weight of everything crashed down on me. 3 years of missed holidays. Countless ignored calls. A family that had stopped expecting me to be present or involved. A grandfather who had chosen potential death over burdening anyone. I broke down completely, sobbing into my hands in the deserted hospital corridor. A passing nurse offered tissues and a gentle pat on the shoulder, but there was no real comfort to be found. This wasn't a problem I could solve with determination or intelligence or work ethic, my usual tools. This was the consequence of hundreds of small choices to prioritize professional advancement over family connection. When my tears finally subsided, I called my boss Diana. It was nearly midnight, but I knew she'd still be awake. "Sarah? Everything okay?" Her concern seemed genuine. "No," I admitted. "My grandfather's in the hospital. Heart attack. My parents are flying in tomorrow. I need more time off, at least through New Year's, maybe longer." A pause. "The Jefferson presentation is scheduled for January 3rd. We need you back to finalize." For the first time in my career, I said words I'd never dared. "The presentation will have to wait. My family needs me." Diana's tone cooled immediately. "I understand personal emergencies happen, but you need to consider your professional commitments. We've invested a lot in your career path, Sarah. And I've given everything to this job. Missed holidays, worked weekends, answered emails at midnight. For once, my family comes first." "We'll need to discuss this when you return," she replied, the threat implicit. "Yes, we will," I agreed, surprising myself with my calm. "But right now, I have more important concerns." After hanging up, I felt something unexpected relief. Whatever professional consequences awaited, they seemed insignificant compared to the family crisis unfolding around me. In the early hours of Christmas morning, Grandpa's condition suddenly deteriorated. Alarms blared as nurses rushed into his room, calling for the on-call cardiologist. I watched helplessly from the doorway as they worked to stabilize him, medical terminology flying over my head, understanding only that he was slipping away. "Please," I whispered to no one in particular, "don't take him too. Not before I can make this right." The crisis passed, but Dr. Reynolds emerged from the room with a grave expression. "We need to operate sooner rather than later. The damage is extensive, and waiting is no longer an option." "Do whatever it takes," I said. Cost is not a concern. As dawn broke on Christmas Day, I sat beside Grandpa's bed, holding his hand while he slept, waiting for my parents' plane to land, and praying I hadn't realized what mattered most too late. The airport arrival area buzzed with holiday travelers, joyful reunions, children running to grandparents, couples embracing after separation. I stood apart from this festivity, scanning the crowd for my parents' faces, rehearsing what to say when I saw them. Then suddenly, there they were, but not as I remembered them. Dad's hair had turned completely gray, his tall frame stooped with invisible weight. Mom looked thinner, fragile somehow, though her eyes remained sharp and alert. They searched the crowd until Mom spotted me, nudging Dad's arm and pointing. Our eyes locked across the terminal. For a moment, no one moved. 3 years of minimal contact, culminating in crisis. What was the protocol for such a reunion? Mom broke first, rushing toward me with arms outstretched. I met her halfway, enveloped in her familiar scent of vanilla and cold cream. Dad joined more slowly, his embrace tentative until I pulled him closer. "Sarah," Mom whispered, pulling back to look at me, hands framing my face. "You look tired, honey."
Such a mom thing to say.
I laughed through sudden tears. "I am tired. It's been a rough couple of days." "How is he?" Dad asked, his voice rougher than I remembered. "Stable for now. They're prepping him for surgery this afternoon." I hesitated. "It's serious, Dad. They're not making promises." His jaw tightened, eyes glistening. "Let's go then. No time to waste." The drive to the hospital was awkward, filled with surface conversation, flight details, Florida weather, hospital directions. We circled carefully around the deeper issues, as if by mutual agreement to postpone the difficult discussions until after seeing Grandpa. In the hospital parking lot, Mom reached for my hand across the center console. Thank you for being here with him. For calling us. For the flights. Her gratitude felt like a knife twist. Don't thank me. I should have been here, all along. Dad sighed from the back seat. We all make choices, Sarah. Let's not do this now. The cardiac care unit was quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors and soft footsteps of nurses. Outside Grandpa's room, I paused. He looks smaller than you remember, I warned. And there are a lot of tubes and wires. But he's been lucid, asking for you both. Mom squared her shoulders, a gesture so familiar it ached. We're ready. Nothing could have prepared them, though. Mom gasped at the sight of Grandpa in the hospital bed, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad froze in the doorway, color draining from his face. Grandpa's eyes fluttered open at the sound. Maggie? Richard? You came. Mom rushed to his bedside, taking his hand carefully between hers. Of course we came, Dad. We'd never stay away. Shouldn't have bothered, he mumbled. Expensive tickets. Stop that, Mom scolded gently. Nothing's more important than family. The pointed glance she shot me over her shoulder wasn't subtle. Dad caught it too, his expression hardening as he joined them by the bed. You stubborn old man, Dad said, his voice gruff with emotion. You were supposed to be taking your medication regularly. I was. Grandpa protested weakly. Most days, anyway. And the surgery you refused?
Dad continued.
Were you ever going to tell us how serious it really was? Tension crackled in the small room. I stepped forward. Dad, maybe now isn't. No, it's exactly the time, he interrupted. We've all been keeping too many secrets. Look where it's gotten us. Richard, Mom cautioned, your father needs rest, not confrontation. What he needs is honesty, Dad insisted. From all of us. Fine, I said, squaring my shoulders. Let's start with why you didn't tell me you were losing everything and moving to Florida. The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Mom looked away, Dad's jaw worked silently, and Grandpa closed his eyes as if wishing to disappear from the brewing storm. We tried, Mom finally said. We called multiple times in September and October. Left voicemails asking you to call back for something important. I remembered those calls, received while running between meetings, dismissed with a mental note to return them later. A note I'd never followed through on. You could have been more direct, I argued weakly. Said it was an emergency. And you could have called your family more than once a month for 10 minutes, Dad shot back. When exactly were we supposed to tell you our life was imploding? During your rushed Christmas call? In a text between your meetings? A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the rising voices. Everything okay in here? Mr. Matthews needs to stay calm before surgery. We all mumbled apologies, momentarily chastened. When she left, Mom took a deep breath and continued in a lower voice. Sarah, we didn't tell you because we were ashamed. Your father and I, we failed. The business your grandfather built, that we were supposed to pass on to you and Tyler, we lost it all. It wasn't your fault, I said. Grandpa told me about the investment scam, the big box competition. I should have seen it coming, Dad insisted. Should have adapted, found a way to compete. Instead, I gambled everything on a too-good-to-be-true opportunity. And I didn't tell you about my heart attack, Mom added quietly. Because you were finalizing that big Seattle account. You'd worked so hard for that promotion. A promotion? I repeated hollowly. You had a heart attack and I was worried about a promotion. Grandpa's weak voice interrupted. Nobody's perfect. Everyone thought they were protecting someone else. Me included. Which brings us to you. Dad turned back to his father. Refusing life-saving surgery to save money? What were you thinking? That my life at 80 isn't worth bankrupting what's left of this family, Grandpa said simply. Medicare covers most but not all. The copays, the recovery care, it adds up. That wasn't your decision to make. Dad's voice broke. You're my father. I would have found a way. Like you found a way to save the store? The words escaped before I could stop them. Dad recoiled as if slapped. Mom gasped, "Sarah, I'm sorry." I backpedaled immediately. "I didn't mean, no, you meant it," Dad said, his voice cold. "You've always been brutally efficient, Sarah. Direct to the point of cruelty, sometimes. Another quality you inherited from me, I suppose." The truth in his words silenced me. We were more alike than I'd realized, both stubborn, both proud, both making unilateral decisions thinking we knew best. "This isn't helping," Mom interjected. "We're all upset and saying things we don't mean. Or maybe we're finally saying what needs to be said," Dad countered. "We've been dancing around the truth for years. Sarah thinks we failed the family by losing the business. We think she abandoned the family for her career. Dad thinks he's a burden. Tyler feels forgotten by everyone. We're all right and we're all wrong." The brutal assessment hung in the air. Grandpa's monitors beeped steadily in the background, the only sound as we all absorbed Dad's words. "The Matthews family," Grandpa finally said, his voice stronger than before, "stubborn as mules and too proud for our own good. My father was the same. Wouldn't take help during the Depression until we were nearly starving. Some legacies should end," I suggested quietly. "Mr. Matthews?" A different nurse appeared. "We need to prep you for surgery now. Family will need to go to the waiting area." Reality crashed back. Grandpa's life hung in the balance while we argued about who had failed whom. Suddenly our grievances seemed petty compared to the possibility of losing him. We each took turns saying what might be final goodbyes. Mom kissed his forehead, whispering something private that made him smile. Dad squeezed his hand wordlessly, emotions too complex for verbalization. When my turn came, I leaned close to his ear. "Fight, Grandpa. We need you to show us how to be a family again." As they wheeled him away, a surgical team member approached with forms. "We need authorization for the procedure and payment arrangements." I took the clipboard without hesitation. "I'll handle everything." "Sarah," Mom began to protest, "we can't let you." "Yes, you can," I interrupted firmly. "This is one problem I actually can solve. Let me do this." Dad started to object but stopped himself, studying my face. Whatever he saw there made him nod slightly. "Thank you." Left alone in the now empty room, the tension that had sustained us through confrontation dissolved. Mom sank into a chair, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Dad stood by the window, stoically staring out at nothing. I remained by the door, uncertain where I belonged in this tableau of family grief. A nurse directed us to the surgical waiting area where uncomfortable chairs and vending machines awaited. As we settled in for the long wait, the weight of everything, the revelations, accusations, and unspoken hurts, became too much. I stood abruptly. "I need some air," I mumbled, practically running down the corridor. In a deserted hospital stairwell, I finally let myself break completely. Every mistake, every missed call, every time I'd chosen work over family played through my mind like a damning slideshow. If Grandpa died today, his final memories of our family would be bitter arguments and recriminations. I wasn't sure how long I sat there, but eventually the stairwell door opened. Dad stood awkwardly, hands shoved in pockets. "Your mother was worried," he said simply. "I fine." The lie was transparent. He sat beside me on the cold step. "No, you're not. None of us are." We sat in silence for several minutes before he spoke again. "I was proud like you once. Thought I could handle everything myself. Your grandfather tried to warn me about expanding too quickly, about taking on too much debt. I didn't listen." "Dad, let me finish. Pride cost me my father's business. Cost us our home. Nearly cost us our marriage at one point." He sighed heavily. "Don't let it cost you what matters most, Sarah. Success means nothing if you've got no one to share it with." "I thought I was doing what you wanted," I admitted. "Working hard, being independent, succeeding. You always push me to aim higher." "We wanted you to have opportunities," he corrected gently, "not to disappear from our lives." The truth of his words settled between us. Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the doorway, her face ashen. "The doctor's looking for us," she said. "The surgery, there were complications." The hotel room was sterile and impersonal, much like my apartment in Chicago. I sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by scattered papers, my laptop open to a spreadsheet of figures. Outside, Christmas night had settled over the town, lights twinkling in windows of homes where families celebrated together. Our family remained fragmented, Grandpa in post-operative recovery, Mom and Dad in the hospital family room refusing to leave his side despite my offer to get them a hotel room too. The surgery had been touch and go, with complications from Grandpa's weakened heart, but he'd pulled through. Not out of the woods, the surgeon had cautioned, but fighting hard. I'd left the hospital only because Mom had practically ordered me to rest. "You've been awake for nearly 48 hours, she'd pointed out. "You can't help anyone if you collapse." Sleep eluded me, though. Instead, I found myself reviewing everything I'd learned in the past 2 days, piecing together the full story of my family's disintegration from fragments shared by different people. Opening my email, I scrolled through years of communications with my parents. The pattern was painfully obvious now, their messages growing longer and more detailed about family matters, my responses becoming increasingly brief and work-focused. The inflection point was clear about 3 years ago, when I'd received my first major promotion. I opened a blank document and began typing, not a business report or marketing plan, but a letter to my family. Honest, raw, holding nothing back. "Mom, Dad, and Grandpa, I've been trying to understand how we drifted so far apart, and I keep coming back to one conclusion: I let it happen. I chose advancement over connection, achievement over presence, professional success over family bonds." When I got that first big promotion, the validation was intoxicating. Every sacrifice seemed worth it. Missing Tyler's birthday? He'd understand. Cutting our weekly calls short? You'd always be there when I had more time. Skipping holidays? There'd always be next year. Except time doesn't stand still. While I was building my career, you were losing the store, facing health crises, making impossible choices. I wasn't just absent physically. I was absent emotionally, so focused on my path that I couldn't see yours crumbling. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did, or failed to do, doesn't deserve easy absolution. But I am asking for a chance to rebuild. To be your daughter and granddaughter again, not just in name but in action. This isn't a promise to quit my job or move back home. It's a commitment to balance, to presence, to making room in my carefully constructed life for what truly matters, you. I continued writing until dawn, pouring out years of unspoken thoughts and feelings. When finished, I printed the letter at the hotel business center, folded it carefully, and placed it in my bag. Whether I'd actually share it remained undecided, but writing it had clarified my own thoughts. The morning brought a new sense of purpose. After checking on Grandpa, who remained stable but unconscious, I left my parents at the hospital and drove to meet with the hospital's financial services department. "I'd like to discuss my grandfather's account," I told the representative, a kind-faced woman named Eleanor. "Harold Matthews. He's currently in cardiac recovery." She pulled up his information, her expression carefully neutral. "I see. And your relationship to the patient?" "Granddaughter. I'll be handling his medical expenses." She nodded, typing something into her computer. "I should inform you that your grandfather's procedure and ongoing care represent significant costs. Even with Medicare coverage, the out-of-pocket expenses will be substantial." "I understand. Could you provide a detailed breakdown of current and projected costs?" What followed was a sobering education in healthcare economics. Between the emergency care, surgery, specialist consultations, and anticipated rehabilitation services, Grandpa's treatment would cost nearly $40,000 after insurance. "There are some assistance programs," Eleanor suggested, noting my expression. "Based on your grandfather's income level, he might qualify for." "That won't be necessary," I interrupted. "I'll cover everything." She seemed surprised but recovered quickly. "That's generous." However, I'd still recommend exploring available programs. There's no reason not to utilize resources designed for these situations. Her pragmatism resonated with me. You're right. Let's look at all options. For the next 2 hours, we navigated applications for senior assistance programs, hospital charity funds, and payment plans. My business training proved unexpectedly valuable as I analyzed terms, negotiated rates, and identified inefficiencies in the billing system that Eleanor flagged for review. "You're good at this," she commented as we finalized arrangements. "Most families are too overwhelmed to be this thorough." "It's the one way I can actually help right now," I admitted. "Numbers and systems I understand. Family, that's more complicated." By early afternoon, I'd established a comprehensive plan that would reduce Grandpa's out-of-pocket expenses by nearly 40% while ensuring he received optimal care. For the first time since arriving home, I felt competent, useful, applying my professional skills to a problem that actually mattered. Back at the hospital, I found Mom dozing uncomfortably in a waiting room chair while Dad stared blankly at a muted television playing holiday specials. "Any change?" I asked quietly. Dad shook his head. "Doctor says it's normal, the sedation keeping him under. Should start waking up tomorrow." I handed him a coffee from the cafe downstairs. "You should both go to the hotel. Get some real rest." "I'll stay." "We're fine," he insisted automatically. "Dad," I said gently, "you're exhausted. Mom looks uncomfortable. There's nothing you can do here that I can't. Please let me take this shift." After some persuasion, they reluctantly agreed, taking the hotel key I offered. As they gathered their things, I added, "I met with financial services this morning. Everything's arranged for Grandpa's care." Dad stiffened. "Sarah, we can't accept. It's not charity," I interrupted. "It's family. And before you argue, I've already signed the papers. It's done." After they left, I settled into the hard waiting room chair, laptop open to catch up on work emails. Diana had sent several increasingly pointed messages about the Jefferson presentation and my unexpected absence. I'd been dreading this confrontation, but somehow, sitting in a hospital waiting for news of my grandfather's recovery, corporate politics seemed remarkably unimportant. I dialed Diana's number. "Sarah," she answered coolly. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd forgotten about your responsibilities here." "I haven't," I replied calmly, "but I've needed to reprioritize temporarily. My grandfather had emergency heart surgery yesterday. He's still in critical condition." "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, sounding genuinely sympathetic before shifting back to business. "However, the Jefferson account represents nearly $2 million in potential revenue. We need you back by the 31st at the latest to finalize the presentation. 3 days from now. Before Grandpa would even leave the hospital." "I can't do that, Diana.
My family needs me right now."
"Sarah," her voice hardened, "I've supported your career advancement consistently. I've overlooked your limited team-building skills because your results were exceptional. But this level of unprofessionalism is actually me being a human being." I finished for her. "For the first time in years, honestly. Are you willing to jeopardize everything you've worked for?" The threat was unmistakable. The Sarah of a week ago would have capitulated immediately, packed her bags, and caught the next flight to Chicago. That Sarah no longer existed. If that's what it takes, yes. I can work remotely on the presentation, but I won't be back in the office until my grandfather is stable and my family situation is addressed. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she said, "I'll have Andrea take over the Jefferson account. When you decide your priority is your career again, we'll discuss your future with the company." After disconnecting, I waited for panic or regret to set in. Instead, I felt an unexpected lightness. Whatever happened professionally, I'd finally made a choice I wouldn't regret on my deathbed. The afternoon passed slowly. I answered work emails, transferring ongoing projects to colleagues with detailed notes. If I was potentially sacrificing my job, I would at least do so professionally. Between emails, I researched cardiac rehabilitation services in both Pennsylvania and Florida, comparing options for Grandpa's recovery. The more I learned, the more I understood the complexity of the choices facing my family. By evening, I'd formed the outline of a plan. When Mom and Dad returned, looking marginally more rested, I shared my thoughts. "I've been thinking about Grandpa's recovery," I began. "He'll need significant support initially. The house here isn't ideal, too many stairs, too isolated if there's another emergency." Dad nodded wearily. "We know, but we can't afford to move back right now, and he refuses to come to Florida. What if we compromised? Made the house more accessible in the short term while exploring options for the future?" "The bank forecloses next month," Mom reminded me. "Any improvements would be wasted. Unless we stop the foreclosure." They exchanged glances. "Sarah, that's not possible." "The amount owed." "I've done the math," I interrupted, pulling out my laptop to show them the spreadsheet I'd created. "If we negotiate with the bank for a loan modification and I contribute to catch up the arrears, we could potentially keep the house, at least until Grandpa recovers fully and can make a decision about his future with complete information." They stared at my calculations in silence. "This is a lot of money, Sarah," Dad finally said. "Your savings are mine to use as I choose," I finished. "But there's something else we need to address." I took a deep breath and continued. "I'm not suggesting I swoop in with money and solve everything. That's not sustainable or healthy. We need honest communication about finances, health, future plans, everything we've been avoiding." Mom reached for my hand. "You're right. No more secrets, no more protective lies. And no more absence," I added, meeting her eyes. "I've already told my boss I'm extending my leave. I may not have a job to go back to, but I'll figure that out later." "You can't sacrifice your career," Dad protested. "After everything you've worked for?" "I'm not sacrificing it. I'm balancing it with what matters more." I smiled slightly. "Something I should have learned from you both long ago." That night, we left the hospital together, stopping first at a local diner, the only place open on Christmas night. Over simple meals, we began the painful but necessary process of full disclosure. Mom shared details about her health that she'd minimized previously. Dad outlined the exact state of their finances in Florida. I explained my own financial situation and career uncertainties. For the first time in years, we spoke as adults. No protective filters, no glossing over difficulties, no performance of success. Just truth, uncomfortable but liberating. The next morning, a nurse called. Grandpa was awake and asking for us. We rushed to the hospital, finding him pale but alert, his eyes brightening when he saw all three of us enter together. "Well," he said weakly, "looks like I'm not rid of you all yet." I moved to his bedside, taking his frail hand in mine. "Not a chance. You're stuck with us, all of us from now on." His fingers tightened around mine. "Good. That's how it should be." In that moment, surrounded by my imperfect, struggling, resilient family, I realized we'd turned a corner. Recovery, both Grandpa's and our families, would be long and challenging, but for the first time, we'd face it together. 3 weeks later, the house on Maple Street looked remarkably different. Fresh paint brightened the exterior, new ramps replaced front steps, and inside, Grandpa's bedroom had been relocated to the former dining room to eliminate stair climbing during his recovery. I stood in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner while Mom sorted through medication schedules and Dad finished installing grab bars in the bathroom. From the makeshift bedroom came the sound of Grandpa chuckling at some old Western on the television, a sound that had become wonderfully familiar again. His recovery had exceeded medical expectations. "Stubborn old goat," his cardiologist had commented with admiration. "Too ornery to give up." The same determination that had made him refuse to leave his home now fueled his rehabilitation, pushing through physical therapy exercises with grim resolve. The foreclosure had been halted through a combination of negotiation, financial assistance programs I discovered, and yes, some of my savings. The bank agreed to a modified payment plan that my parents could manage with their Florida income supplemented by what I could contribute monthly. My own situation had evolved unexpectedly. After a tense conversation with upper management at Palmer Marketing, we'd reached a compromise. I would work remotely for 3 months while Grandpa stabilized, then transition to a position in their Philadelphia office, a manageable commute from my hometown. The arrangement meant a lateral move rather than the promotion track I'd been on, but the trade-off felt right. Dinner in 10 minutes, I called out, hearing acknowledgments from various parts of the house. This new routine, shared meals, divided responsibilities, open communication, had developed organically over the weeks of crisis management. Mom entered the kitchen, tucking Grandpa's medication chart into a binder. Need help? Almost done, I smiled. Though you could set the table. As she arranged plates around the kitchen island that now served as our dining area, she said casually, Mrs. Baker mentioned the community center needs someone with marketing experience for their fundraising campaign. Volunteer position, but good connections. Subtle, Mom. I laughed. I'll think about it. Just saying, if you're going to be around more? She shrugged, but her eyes held hope. I will be, I assured her. 1 weekend a month at minimum, plus holidays. For real this time. The promise wasn't empty. My new work arrangement included explicit boundaries, no answering emails after 7 p.m., no working weekends unless absolutely necessary, and guaranteed time off for family events. Diana had been shocked by my insistence, but something in my expression must have conveyed my non-negotiable stance. Dad joined us, smelling of paint and wood. Bathrooms all set for Dad. Should make things easier for him. And for you both when you visit, I noted. My parents had extended their stay to help with Grandpa's initial recovery, but would need to return to Florida soon. Tyler had managed a 4-day visit after New Year's, reconnecting with everyone and sharing his own struggles and hopes more openly than before. About that, Dad said, exchanging glances with Mom. We've been talking. The Florida situation was always meant to be temporary, a way to get back on our feet. Thomas has offered me a permanent position at his company, but your heart's not in construction? I finished, recalling our conversations over the past weeks. He nodded. I've been in retail hardware my whole life. Starting over at 58 in a new industry, it's harder than I expected. We're considering moving back, Mom said cautiously. Not immediately, but perhaps by summer. There's a small commercial space for rent downtown. Nothing like the old store, but enough to start a specialized hardware business, focusing on restoration supplies for the historic homes in the area. The idea clearly energized Dad in a way I hadn't seen since arriving home. There's a niche market the big box stores don't serve well, with a targeted inventory and some online sales component. That sounds perfect, I said sincerely. Have you run the numbers? Working on it, he admitted. It would be tight financially. I might know someone who could help with a business plan, I offered. And maybe some digital marketing strategy. Mom's eyes misted. We'd appreciate that, but we don't want to impose on your time. It's not an imposition when it's family, I interrupted, echoing words I'd repeated often these past weeks. Dinner that night was simple but significant, our first meal together since Grandpa's return home. He insisted on sitting at the table with us despite his weakness, proudly using the walker he'd initially resisted. Best meal I've had in months, he declared, though the chicken casserole was nothing special. Because you're eating with family instead of alone, Mom said softly. He nodded, suddenly serious. That sandwich you found me eating when you arrived, Sarah, I've been thinking about it. Sad little meal for a sad old man. Didn't see the point in cooking just for myself anymore. Well, no more sandwiches alone, I promised. Even when Mom and Dad go back to Florida temporarily, I'll be here weekends. And Mrs. Baker has organized a meal rotation with the neighbors for weeknights. Don't need charity, he grumbled automatically. It's not charity, Dad corrected. It's community. Something we all forgot the value of, I think. After dinner, we gathered in the living room, now rearranged to accommodate Grandpa's mobility needs. The space remained sparsely furnished. Most items had indeed gone to Florida, but somehow felt more like home than ever. I have something for everyone, I said, retrieving 3 envelopes from my bag. I've been thinking about what happened, how we drifted apart, and I wanted to make some concrete commitments. I handed each of them an envelope. Inside, they found personalized letters outlining my promises for maintaining connection, specific visit schedules, weekly video calls, monthly family newsletters, and an emergency fund contribution plan. You don't need to formalize this, Mom protested gently. I do, I insisted. For myself as much as for you. I need these boundaries and commitments to prevent falling back into old patterns. Grandpa studied his letter carefully before looking up. This says you'll be here for my birthday in April. I will, I confirmed. Already requested the time off. And Thanksgiving at our place in Florida? Dad questioned. If that's where you still are by then, yes. Though it sounds like you might be back here instead. Mom wiped tears. This means everything, Sarah. There's something else, I continued. I've been thinking about why I became so disconnected. It wasn't just ambition or being busy. I think part of me was running from responsibility, from seeing you all struggle or age. If I stayed away, focused only on work achievements, I could pretend everything here remained perfect and unchanging. That's human nature, Grandpa said quietly. Nobody wants to watch their parents get old or their childhood certainties crumble. Maybe, but avoiding reality doesn't change it. It just means you miss precious time that can't be recovered. I looked at each of them. I can't get back the past 3 years, but I can make sure the next 30 are different. As winter turned slowly towards spring, our new family patterns solidified. Grandpa grew stronger each week, though his doctors warned he would never regain his previous vitality. My parents returned reluctantly to Florida, but called daily and visited monthly as they prepared for their eventual move back. I settled into a rhythm of weekdays in Philadelphia at my new position and weekends at home, helping Grandpa and reconnecting with a community I'd dismissed as too small and limiting for so long. The specialized hardware store concept progressed from idea to business plan, with my marketing expertise contributing to a solid online strategy to complement the physical location. For Easter, our first major holiday since Christmas, we gathered at the house on Maple Street, Grandpa now moving with a cane instead of a walker, Tyler home from Florida with news of a promotion at work, and my parents bringing architectural drawings for the new store layout. I'd arrived a day early to prepare the house and cook much of the meal, a task I'd once considered tedious, but now found deeply satisfying. As we sat around the table, hastily expanded with card tables to accommodate everyone plus Mrs. Baker and 2 other neighbors who'd been instrumental in Grandpa's recovery, I looked at the faces of my family, really seeing them. Dad's enthusiasm as he explained his vision for the store. Mom's quiet competence as she organized serving dishes. Tyler's newfound confidence as he shared stories from his job. Grandpa's contentment simply watching his family reunited. A toast, I suggested, raising my glass. To family, imperfect, stubborn, sometimes frustrating, but always worth fighting for. To family, they echoed, glasses clinking. Later, helping Mom with dishes, I asked the question that had lingered since Christmas. Do you think we'll ever fully recover from the breakdown in communication? The years of distance. She considered thoughtfully before answering. I think we already have, in the ways that matter most. Trust is rebuilding. Communication is honest now. Presence has replaced absence. But the lost time can't be recovered, she acknowledged. But Sarah, healing doesn't mean erasing the wound completely. Sometimes it means accepting the scar as part of your story and learning from it. Her wisdom resonated deeply. The crisis had changed us all, financially, geographically, emotionally, but perhaps we needed that upheaval to rebuild on a stronger foundation. That night, before leaving to return to my apartment in Philadelphia, I sat with Grandpa on the porch, watching stars appear in the spring sky. You know, he said reflectively, when you found me that night with just that sandwich, I thought I was at the end. Alone, house being taken, health failing. Couldn't see much point in fighting anymore. And now? I asked softly. Now I remember what I'm fighting for. He patted my hand. Family isn't just about being born to the same people, Sarah. It's a choice you make every day, to stay connected, to work through difficulties, to prioritize relationships over convenience. I'm learning that, I agreed. Slowly but surely. Some lessons can only be learned through loss or near loss, he observed. Almost losing everything taught your parents what really mattered. Almost losing me taught you the same. I leaned my head against his shoulder, a gesture of affection I hadn't offered since childhood. I just wish I'd understood sooner. You understood exactly when you needed to, he assured me. That's how life works. We're ready for the lesson when it arrives, not before. As I drove back to Philadelphia that night, I reflected on the journey from that dark Christmas Eve to this moment of reconnection. The corporate achievements that had once defined my worth now took their proper place in a much broader life picture. The family I'd nearly lost through neglect had become my anchor and priority. The sandwich, that simple, solitary meal that had greeted my homecoming, had become symbolic in my mind. A meal eaten alone versus the nourishment of family connection. A choice between isolation and belonging. Between success defined by career advancement and success measured by relationship depth. I still had my career, albeit with different boundaries and expectations. But now I also had regular Sunday dinners with Grandpa, monthly family meetings via video call, and a growing involvement in the community I'd once been so eager to escape. The balance wasn't perfect, life rarely is, but it was authentic and increasingly satisfying. As I approach the one-year anniversary of that life-changing Christmas homecoming, I want to ask you, what priorities might you be neglecting while chasing success? What conversations have you been avoiding with loved ones? Remember that a family's strength isn't in its perfection but in its resilience and commitment to each other through both celebration and crisis. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about family reconciliation and life lessons. Share in the comments a moment when you realized what truly mattered in your own life. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may your own family connections grow stronger through both the difficult and joyful moments ahead.